another bad week.
Do you know what the trophy was made of?
You've got to be kidding me.
So if you think it's not a penalty, can I have the place back?
Wooden spoon odour.
That's the crossest I've seen him.
It's like when you support Benadryl. Welcome to the Inside Track with me, Rick Edwards. This is the podcast that takes you inside Formula One like never before.
And I'm sports journalist Matt Magendie, and thanks to my exclusive access, I'll be getting up close and personal with Red Bull Racing this season.
Now, I'm not quite arms folded, but it's another bad week for Red Bull, and consecutive bad weeks for Red Bull I feel like are quite unusual.
Yeah. I mean, it was a entirely different experience,
different sort of
wasn't
bad
it?
week.
But yeah,
Still a bad week.
I'm still Yuki finishing at the back of the grid. I mean, Max
Making that his own.
Yeah, and
Do you know what I wrote down in my notes? Wooden spoon odour. Doesn't quite work, but
needs a few more races to catch on. And then Max, I mean, that was tough. And then spinning like he did, and then I mean, he did well to claw. What did he drop back down to 10th to claw that back to 5th by the end? But that wasn't a cracking home race, was it?
And it's funny as well because after qualifying, I mean, that was an incredible lap that came out of absolutely nowhere, but didn't transfer to the race. And I'm always a bit confused by that.
A bit to do with we'll talk about it in depth
floor.
later on. No, actually,
not the floor.
Partly, the floor was good for making them better, but it's to do with the rear wing choice they made, and they were slightly undone by the heavy rain.
So on the other teams, Lando Norris winning, obviously delighted, celebrated by getting the trophy to the nose.
Do you know what the trophy was made of?
Lego?
Yes.
Which is very nice.
Over 2,000 pieces.
Although all I could think was, Nico Hulkenberg, you get your first ever podium after
Lego.
240, and it's a Lego trophy. Like, you're taking the piss.
He's got a young kid, so that might
maybe. I sort of think I'd want.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you've got to be kidding me.
I didn't think about that.
I'd have a word. Just say,
do you think he gets a different?
Can
Can I get something else?
Can I have a proper one? Yeah, this is very funny, but can I have a proper one, please? But yeah, getting that to the face. That's the face. Looks like quite a nasty.
Yeah, well, when you saw him with
the sort of
bandages
butterfly
on,
stitches. Yeah,
didn't seem to dent the celebrations by all accounts.
No, I mean he was cock-a-hoop.
Yeah,
and obviously won it because Piastri got this 10-second penalty. Because to be fair, Piastri drove a really good race and
he was the quickest person.
He was the quickest and in control, and it is only because of that penalty that he didn't get it. Seemed to be quite split.
Yeah, what did you make of it? Where did you?
I sort of land on. Yeah, that seems fair enough. It seemed like a pretty,
I am too.
Firm break. I do wonder if Verstappen is so good, so sort of wily, if he's made the most of it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
I think that's possible. But I think that's
I love that.
Do you think?
I mean, that is perfectly possible. I don't necessarily believe that was the case because if people were comparing to the Russell one where and Russell hit the brakes. I think Piastri hit the brakes doubly hard than that. So if you do a like-for-like comparison. But you're saying so by Max going past, that just sort of exacerbated the wrongdoing by Piastri.
Well, I mean, it does, doesn't it? It does. You just look at it and go, oh, well, he's absolutely... I sort of think Max is...
Just being Machiavellian.
Good enough. Quick, Machiavellian, yeah. Quick enough. And, I think he could have... Maybe he could not have done that.
That's interesting. No, I mean, it's a fair,
by the way, if that is the case, I love it.
Yeah, you like it even
superb.
more.
Yeah, it's absolutely superb.
And did you like the bit? I liked also the bit further on because I was sort of so in tune with the Red Bull stuff that I didn't hear this till afterwards when Piastri asked if the team could swap the places back because McLaren had argued they didn't think it was a penalty.
Yeah.
So he gets on the race radio. Well, if you think it's not a penalty, can I have the place back?
That might be. That's tricky, actually. I think, Oscar.
But I like the ballsiness of it. At least asking. So that was.
He was pretty cross about it. I mean, not that he's so sort of composed.
That's the crossest I've seen him.
But he's very he's able to kind of keep it in because he knows he's getting more trouble if he.
He said it 2 or 3 times, didn't he? Like, if I say any more than this, I'm going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
But it was quite pointed what he was.
It's about as fuming as you'll ever see him, I think.
Definitely.
Which is still not very fuming.
I mean, it was nicer for the story that it was Lando winning his home race in front of his home fans, and all his family were there, his parents, his grandparents, etc.
Yeah.
But you would, Piastri was slightly robbed, wasn't he? Because he had been so good, so quick.
Yeah, I mean, well, I do think the penalty was fair, and so I guess maybe you'd say he robbed himself.
Yeah, okay.
Just because
it was a silly error, wasn't it?
I think so.
Because he didn't need to do. I think he still had 3 more corners to come before the safety car pulled in, so he didn't need to do it.
No, so. I don't think so. I thought Lewis Hamilton's 4th was pretty good. I mean, I know he'd be disappointed, like it breaks his amazing sort of run of consecutive podiums at Silverstone, but I think it was a pretty. I mean, he was complaining and saying the car was really hard to drive in the wet, but I think 4th's respectable.
He said it was the hardest car ever to drive in the wet. Yeah. It's funny how these drivers say these things very dramatically, and then they'll get pole position or win a race or finish on the podium, or his case 4th. I feel like Ferrari going in the right direction. It doesn't seem like he's totally happy yet with life, but I think what happened previous races and now going to the next one, I think he'll feel quite buoyed, won't he? I mean, whereas Leclerc had an absolute shocker, Hamilton, maybe he could have got 3rd, but I don't think his tyres just weren't quite there and he couldn't catch Hulkenberg.
What an amazing statement that is.
Yeah.
Hamilton could not catch Hulkenberg in the kick salver.
Because I was so sort of ensconced in the Red Bull world that suddenly all these things were, like, results were happening, like, well, Hulkenberg suddenly 3rd and Hamilton's there.
From 19th.
Alonso, I sort of didn't really see quite how it happened at the time, but it was bonkers. And it was so nice to see, 239th for a race, I think it was, and how delighted people were. Like Max Verstappen actually name-checked him. Even in the Red Bull press release they send out, Max Verstappen name-checks Nico Hulkenberg as well. I think it was a very popular podium. And there's quite a sweet moment. Did you see, when they go into that room straight after the result and they sit in those chairs watching...
The cool-down room,
whatever
cool-down
room.
Yeah.
Your drivers meant to bring their helmets down in there. And Nico Hulkenberg had never been there, so didn't know this. And very sweetly, in comes Lando Norris, race winner, carrying both helmets. Yeah. It's like, what do you do with that, Nico Hulkenberg? Why do I need that? And he just puts it down for him, which I thought was lovely because he'd never experienced it, so didn't know it. Lando, consummate professional, regular on the podium, obviously did know, but that was quite a sweet little touch.
Funny if he brought in a Lego helmet for him.
Maybe it was.
It's all Lego. It is all Lego, unfortunately. That's something you didn't know before. But it's such a it's obviously a great result, but also just generally, Sauber. I mean, where are they? And they're like 6th.
Yeah, they'll be just below Williams, I think now. Yeah.
They will be absolutely delighted.
Yeah, but they came with a big upgrade package in Barcelona, and suddenly they're incredible.
Yeah,
and it's not just we were talking about maybe this is going to be a one-off or whatever, but it doesn't seem to be.
No.
I don't know how he did that. Like, that is a hell of a drive. I know it was the wet and it levels things up.
Well,
but it didn't level everyone else up in quite such a ridiculous way.
It was so chaotic as a race, and it was dry and it was wet.
I couldn't work out who was on what tyres when, and even with sort of
I'm not sure the teams could either. There's I don't know, slicks, is it? Go on.
There was some. I think Mercedes got their calls wrong, didn't they?
Had to laugh a bit at Mercedes and George Russell and the conversation they had about how wet it was.
Yeah.
Were you able to follow that?
I didn't until after the race, but basically I was just saying, like, how with Red Bull they were liaising with Max to make the call, and George made the call time to go on the slicks, and they were like, don't think so, buddy. He says, no, definitely. Comes in, spins almost immediately, and then complains that the track is wetter despite no more rain having
it's so
come down. Unless someone's being mean.
It's got wetter. How? How has it got wetter? I don't know.
I love it, but he sounded incredulous. I can't believe it's got wetter since I made this decision.
And actually, no one can, because it hasn't.
I'm not sure. I didn't hear what he got back from his race radio after that. I'm not sure what the response there.
I think they probably have quite a funny conversation somewhere in private about it.
That wasn't great. Yeah. But he was quite helpful because he and Alonso were the sort of guinea pigs for others to realise that was not the time quite to go on slicks. But it's amazing how quickly it dried, because then people came onto the slicks pretty quickly after that point. But you've got to push it sometimes.
But also weird that it got wetter.
That is odd, isn't it?
With no rain.
Maybe someone spilled a drink.
So hard to raucous Silverstone crowd.
Yeah, Red Bull got that right for Max. The tyres. It was really interesting again being in that. I have never heard so much chat on the race radio as that one. There was so much conversation. At one point, GP, Max's engineer, goes, there's just too much chat on here today. which was quite funny. And then at one point, Max says, can you let me concentrate on my race? Because there was so much information, and they were getting because they needed information from him, because he could decide, only he could really decide what tyres to go on, because he knew which pits. There was a certain corner that was the most wet and when it was safe to go on slicks. And so these strategists and engineers were reliant on the driver information. It was amazing how much different stuff that was going on I couldn't really follow.
General sort of mood in the Red Bull camp now. So obviously disappointed with 5th. I think for Max should have probably finished a bit higher. I think
if it had been dry, I think he could have won that race with that rear wing.
Yeah.
It's hard to know for sure, because the McLarens were very quick again, and we didn't really know what was going to consistently happen with the cornering and how his tyres would be. The tyres were still a bit of an unknown. They will have hoped for higher than 5th, certainly.
He's so good in the wet as well.
Yep.
To not get...
If you see Brazil last year from 17th to 1st, it was Hulkenberg-esque.
Yeah.
Is that going to be the new phrase?
Yes, it is. Yeah, well, certainly on this show.
But yeah, they'll be disappointed. They would have hoped to have had a podium at least. I think the win was their aim, but they knew, looking at that forecast, they knew, just before the race, that this was not going to be an easy day in the office.
And then Yuki last again.
I don't know, because his qualifying was great. I know he only qualified 11th, but his qualifying place was great.
Here we go. The Sonoda apologist. I think it was a fantastic race.
He had a power unit failure issue, so he couldn't get high. So he would have. So finally, he was going to have this performance to deliver, and then he was let down by it. And my other apology for him, I do this too often, do I? Is that he doesn't.
We both like the guy.
This amazing new floor. He doesn't have the new floor, and that probably is worth about 0.2 of a second a lap. But that doesn't account for 5th place down to bottom.
No.
So that's the bit. But yeah, he doesn't have the same car as Max at this point.
No.
So my apologies are over.
Yeah, but on the flip side, both Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar didn't finish.
Oh, that was an awful race for them, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Poor
old Isaac Hadjar just didn't see. Was it Antonelli he ploughed into as he came out of the wet, and then Liam Lawson just got hit. Not much he could do about it. But that was a tough. I don't know how they would have fared, but that was a tough day at the office.
Do you think, if you're Yuki Tsunoda, you are keeping an eye on what those two are doing?
How do you mean?
Well, as in, you know that people are going to be talking about
that you're going to
sort of the seat rotation issue. Do you think
he'll be like? I think he'll be so insular, so focused on himself and improving himself that that's where the focus would be. I know he changed his plans after Austria and came back straight to the UK on Monday and worked heavily with the team, and so I think he's doing absolutely everything he can to turn things around. And it looked like he was before the apologist, as he says, the power unit issue. And I mean, he knows the track well. He should have gone well in the wet, but he didn't have a great race.
So the wing choice turned out to be a bad one.
It's a sort of difficult one to fully answer, but basically what they opted for. So if you're not the fastest team, you're trying to push the boundaries in different ways.
Yeah.
So they opted for what they were describing as a skinnier rear wing on Max's car for qualifying. Now, in the most basic terms, what that did was gave him unbelievable straight line speed. So he was the quickest car on the straights. And as you know, at Silverstone, they're long straights, so that works quite well.
Yeah.
What you then lose is a little bit of downforce, but because they're high-speed corners, they felt that would be okay. And as you saw then, he had this flying lap, thanks in part to that, and thanks in part to the upgrades on the floor, quicker than the McLarens. And they felt, looking at the forecast, etc., that would be okay in the race. They didn't know for sure, but that would probably be okay in the race. But what happened then, the rain coming down makes it a bit harder for a car to stick to the ground. So the downforce is then in trouble. And so it became a very hard race for him. Now, I don't think, and then you spin. I don't think they regret it in the sense that when they made their call, they spent loads of time in different meetings, conversations, looking at the forecast. The forecast wasn't for rain like that. It was on 20%, and they thought it would be lighter. So it wasn't a stupid route to go down. Actually, I really liked it. It was a bold strategy. And Max even said afterwards, he said the strategy was right when they came in for tyres, all of the things, because other teams messed that up. But yeah, it did make it a really, really tough race because you've just got less downforce and you're aquaplaning into corners.
Yeah.
And as we saw, he spun.
Yeah.
Christian Horner tried to sort of argue that was because of that brake checking by Piastri, but I think Verstappen was able to sort of say actually probably more to do with our setup choice in the rear wing.
Now, we briefly mentioned the floor, the new floor and the rear wing, but you actually spoke to a couple of team members about them, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Spoke to Paul Pedals Monaghan and Callum Adams, and also, interestingly, caught up off record, but with some other members who'd appeared in the podcast the previous week. So Greg Reason, the tyre whisperer, I bumped into him as he was listening to the podcast.
This podcast?
This podcast.
That's
Loved
wonderful.
it, big fan. And then Steve Knowles.
Hang on, did he actually say that, or are you inferring it?
Yeah, I think he did say it. Let's just say he said it. And then Steve Knowles, who tells me that his mum clips everything that he does. So when he's on TV, she records all the clips of him on the pit wall. So
That's
she's going to add this to that list as well. So first up is Pedals, who's explaining the importance of the floor, not just for a Red Bull car, but all Formula One cars.
The purpose of the floor itself is to lower the pressure under the car compared with that of other. And being of a ground effect nature, the closer you take them to the ground, in a non-linear way, they pick up load. So you want to run them as low as you possibly can. That doesn't work in all the circumstances because we have low and high speed corners. And despite our efforts to stop the thing moving, it goes up and down with speed. So you try to design a floor that will work in a low-speed condition where the ride heights are a bit higher and a high-speed condition where you can effectively be very close or occasionally touching the ground. Those demands are quite different, and you'll see a few solutions here in the paddock. You go and look at the car with Petronas written on the side of it and look at all the sort of blades on the side. There are 7 or 8 in number. So everyone is trying to do or to extract more lap time from the floor, and the methods of doing it are subtly different, but the aim is common, which ultimately is lap time.
When he talks to you, he sounds a bit like a sort of slightly bored and disappointed teacher. Like, this is so obvious. I can't believe I'm having to explain this to you again.
I really like him as a character.
Yeah.
He is.
You know what I mean, though? Like,
but he is.
Well,
that.
Listen.
He basically, gives me a hard time most of the time. He's called me an ignoramus, quite rightly, 4 times in that conversation. But while his voice sounds like he's fed up with me, he's actually been quite funny with it. Yeah. He's an unbelievably dry sense of humour. People had forewarned me.
You must be used to people calling you an ignoramus by now.
I mean, I've never had it 4 times in one chat, but I really was an ignoramus because I was trying to understand these things that my brain isn't big enough to comprehend. You know, I've never had an engineering background.
Hence the sort of tone of frustration in Paul's voice. Yeah.
There's a great moment when he's asking about something and like, what's the difference between this and this, and then there's just silence. As I don't know. I finally come up with the answer, but quite a few clues further down the line. But yeah, I think he's a really great character. He's a funny guy.
Yeah.
Very entertaining, very well regarded.
Do you think he does like you?
I'm going to tell myself yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We had a nice chat about tennis and Wimbledon afterwards.
Okay.
I like also he's playing tennis against Yuki Tsunoda today.
Oh.
Well, that's planned.
Well, he's bound to win that.
Don't be rude. I think Yuki was very confident he was going to be winning that without losing a game. And I think Pedals seemed to also admit that might be the case.
Okay.
But I think he's a pretty keen tennis player, Pedals. But yeah.
Next time you see him, can you just ask him directly? Just look him in the eye and say,
"Do you like
Pedals? Do you like me?"
Well, I'd get a swear word back, and no, I don't. That's what I'm pretty sure.
Actually, but it'd be the translation is yes, probably he does.
Yeah, it'd be unclear what the truth is there, but I like to think he does.
You also spoke to Callum Adams to talk about the floor. I have no idea what Callum feels about you. I'll try and work it out from his tone.
For people who can't see, what are we standing in front of here? So this is our new floor for race 12. To me, my ignorant eyes, this looks like any floor. What's potentially different for this race, though?
The front, really. So towards the front, we've got a slightly different fence configuration, if you want to call it that, which is obviously on the underside. And then working back towards the middle of the floor, we've got a different style edge wing, P-style edge wing.
So these are the sort of what we can see this on the car, can't we? They look like sort of blades. Would you describe them as?
Other teams might call them different things, but we call it an edge wing. And the other bits, I'm not going to say.
Yeah. And so, what difference is this making to Max? Obviously, you saw him on pole, so it's clearly having a positive effect here.
I might have to stop you there. Oh.
No, it's brilliant because
That's
basically
lovely.
there's some parts he's able to talk about, but there's some parts he clearly can't because there are things that you can see that, so they can see those edge bits, but there are other bits he doesn't want to say. Now, to my untrained eye, I don't know what, but yes.
Your ignorant eyes. Yeah.
So someone else from another team would be looking at this and going, oh, right, I see what they've done there. So they feel possibly they've got some clever innovations that they don't want to tell everyone else about, which I love.
And just if you're interested, I do want to call it event configuration. Callum offered that. Yeah, that is what.
That is what you were going to go for. Yeah, okay.
I think so.
Yeah.
So can you fill in some blanks? What was he going on to say? Do you think?
Don't know.
No idea.
No, he had a list of the things, almost like what he could and couldn't say, like on an email that was sent to him. So yeah, I don't know, and I didn't want to.
And that's enough.
Don't think he wanted to land himself in trouble. He was like, "Oh, what has Pedals told you so far?" I said, "I can't remember. It was too complicated."
Was the floor fine for the wet, and it was just the rear wing that was the issue?
Yeah, I think that's exactly the case. I think they knew as soon as the rain came down, they were like, "Oof, that's going to be challenging." So that was the big difference.
Well, coming up, we're going to look at our race predictions. Don't think I had Hulkenberg. I'll check. We're gonna talk a bit about the Formula One movie because you were supposed to have seen it, but you haven't. So we'll get into that.
Yep.
And we'll look ahead to Spa, which I think is one of our favourite tracks.
Yes. Yeah.
In Belgium. Okay, Silverstone race predictions. So we predict the podium. You get a point for each of the drivers who are in the top three, so 3 points up for grabs there. And then if you get the order right, you get the hallowed 6 points. Never been done. We are competing against each other and you and AI. So you can submit your predictions by checking out our Instagram stories. Just search @theinsidetrack_podcast. And we pick one prediction to represent the audience. We can also pick a prediction for a YouTube comment if we want to. The prediction we picked this week for the audience is quite funny. I don't think we had to pick this one, but we did. From Daniel Connor, who has taken the Checo Perez banter a bit too seriously.
Oh,
so his prediction was first Rindt, second Perez, third Mansell.
He was there. He was there in the paddock. I'm not sure he was driving.
But not driving, crucially. So 0 points. So we've completely stitched the audience up. Daniel's just thinking, I'm being funny here. Well, yeah.
It's cost you.
Yeah, it really has. Yeah. Never be funny is the lesson. AI, of course, was not trying to be funny. First, Lando Norris. Second, Sergio Perez. Third, Charles Leclerc, so gets 1 point. And then I'd said first Norris, second Piastri, third Max. So 2 points. And then this is, I really take issue with this. I gave my prediction, then you were like, yes, I'm going for the same. So you also got 2 points.
Subliminally, you've taken my wisdom over previous episodes, it feels.
Awful stuff. Which means we are now starting to show our class. Audience languishing on 18. AI 19. Me on 21. You still well clear on 25. But there's a little bit of...
there's room there.
Little bit of room. Do you know the comedian Josh Pugh?
Yes.
You come across him. He went to Silverstone this weekend. I think the first time he'd been to Formula One. He's not like a big Formula One player. And he was saying, you've got people sort of... wearing like Red Bull stuff, and he chatted to one. He's like, so you're here, love this obviously, and he's like, I support Red Bull, and he's like, you support Red Bull? Support an energy drink? Are you mad? You're not supporting a football team. He said it's like saying you support Benadryl. Really made me laugh.
He did that as a clip.
Yeah,
he's a very, very funny guy.
Yeah, there's a comment actually on YouTube that I wanted to read out. And he's sort of talking, this person is talking about Alice, talking about the Max Mercedes rumour. Says, I find it fascinating how much Max silence is whipping the journos into a frenzy. I feel frenzied. Yeah. I mean, if these clowns who made this Formula One movie wanted a good storyline, they could have just looked at Max's career up until now. But seeing as Lewis is one of the directors, he probably would have said no to it. Missed chance, I'd say. No, to be fair, Lewis is not one of the directors. He's an exec on it, I think, isn't he? I mean, you could sort of pick. That's obviously not what they wanted to do. You could pick any number of Formula One drivers' careers and make it good.
Yeah, I reckon so.
I mean, I would. Who would you go for if you're just like picking? I know who I'm going for. I think. One person, so a biopic.
Well, it would be James Hunt because he's the most colourful of all the characters. I know,
but they've already done that with Rush. They did Rush. Ron Howard's quite good actually.
Yeah,
quite liked it.
But that was about the rivalry with Niki Lauda, though, wasn't it? Like just pure James Hunt, Playboy-esque. I just think he was an amazing character. And then the bit afterwards, he then turned into a fabulous commentator and then sadly died far too young. So I think that I'd go with him. Have you got a standout?
Weirdly, I think I'm going Jenson Button because I think it's still even though I know, it still surprises me. I'm like, he won in that car.
Oh, it's such a great story.
It's amazing, isn't it?
The whole team.
Yeah.
The buyout of Honda and thinking they were going to.
It's sort of perfect and feels very Hollywood.
Did you see the documentary of that season they had with Keanu Reeves doing it? Have you seen that?
No,
I'm not sure what it's on, but it's very good.
Is it a podcast?
No,
or was it
a documentary?
Was it TV?
Yeah, there's only a few parts worth seeing.
I like it when they parachute in sort of Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to. Like, why is he doing that? Talking about Brawn GP.
Yeah.
But then you see he's an absolute petrolhead and he's sort of loving it. And you see that sort of passion come through. I thought it was good.
I mean,
if I watch the film, then you can see the documentary.
Yeah. So next race on the Formula One calendar is Sunday, the 27th of July in Spa in Belgium. So we've got a couple of weeks break coming up, which means there'll be a deep dive episode. What are we deep diving into?
Someone else is coming to the studio. You're going to vacate your seat, and Ed Straw is going to come in from the race. So I've been on his podcast. He's coming in. He's very experienced Formula One journalist with good knowledge, which helps makes up for my lack of understanding of some things. So he's coming in to join us to talk kind of midway point in the season. We're halfway through, reflect on what's happened, a little bit of his take on Red Bull, because obviously we spent some time with them. It'd be good to get a different perception, and also look at the successes and failures of various teams of the past 12 races and look ahead to the remaining races. Because
halfway through, and Max is 69 points off Oscar Piastri, and on the one hand you say that's probably too much, but on the other hand, sort of fairly obviously, if you can lose that amount in the first half, you could also gain it in the second half. Like, it is possible. It just would need, I guess it needs both improvements from Red Bull and then McLaren to sort of
have a terrible race or have a coming together of their drivers. It's quite a sizable gap. It's not insurmountable, but
because there's both of them as well. Like,
they could do some good, really good races before that summer break, and then if they could get some momentum going into that, and because they do need to close that gap. It's getting too big, isn't it?
So Spa is, as I said before, one of our favourite circuits.
Brilliant.
Why? What is so good about it?
It's fast. Basically, drivers love it because it's a proper old-style circuit. You can go incredibly quick. There will be overtaking manoeuvres, which always helps, visually. Also, there's a variety of different winners there, so it's not. I mean, you would say again that McLaren are the favourites to win it, but Hamilton's gone well. They're in a Mercedes. The Ferraris have gone well. Red Bulls have gone well. It's just there's something when it can be a slog this season for some of these drivers. I know they get paid well, but there's a lot of race, but they turn up for this one. buzzing. There's a real kind of energy.
I think Silverstone the same actually.
Yeah,
it's a nice.
Absolutely. Another good example because it's a driver circuit. Again, very fast straights, really quick corners. They're not obviously the same, but they're not dissimilar in some ways. But it should be another cracker.
And are we going to see any more upgrades from Red Bull?
So I did ask that. I don't know. I think there might be a bit more tweaking to that floor, but I don't think at this stage there's going to be any monstrous leaps with their upgrades. But it's still a bit of a gap. They're always aiming for certain target points, and sometimes they can speed those up. So we'll wait and see. They have to announce what their upgrades are just before the race. So we'll find out what theirs will be in other teams.
If it's dry at Spa, is it the kind of race where they might use their skinny rear wing again and hope that the forecast is correct?
I'm not sure. Will they take that gamble again? I don't know.
You wouldn't want to get it wrong twice.
Well, I think they did that because Max was struggling so much with understeer in practice. So I guess they would do it on the basis of how, and so that counteracted.
It'd be a reaction
to how Friday practice. They'd want to go with a more standard wing, but they can change as they see fit. And
are you going to be there?
I am not at that one, no.
Well, if you're not going to be there, I won't bother with any Belgian phrases, and also I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to bother with phrases, given your abject failure.
Give me.
I did miss a message the other week from someone in Austria who provided some other Austrian phrases that were easier than the ones that we gave you, to things like fast like an arrow and total wreck. And I honestly, if you couldn't get those in...
Yeah, that would have been more...
Yeah.
What did we have? Cheese, the way the cheese is bitten or whatever.
That sort of stuff, yeah. It was a bit more idiosyncratic.
Even I might have managed those two.
Fast like an arrow, no one's even blinking at that. It's like, yeah, fine, he's just talking normally. Okay, so predictions for Spa then. AI has gone with Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, first, second, third. And I've gone other way around with the McLaren. So I've gone Piastri wins it, Verstappen second, Norris third. My thinking is that, like, when was the last time that Verstappen went sort of 3 races without getting on the podium?
Yeah.
And also, they're just such, like, the team and Max, just such fierce competitors. I just think that they'll have a much better time.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you.
And then I sort of think that it's ebbed and flowed so much between Norris and Piastri, and I actually think Piastri.
It's funny trying to make
better.
Sense of these predictions.
No, I know. That I sort of think that the ebb and flow means that now it's going to switch back to Piastri for a bit.
So what did you? So you had Piastri,
so I got Piastri, Verstappen, Norris. Yeah.
And so I'm going to have. We're all going to have the same top 3, but again, I'm going to do a different order. I'd have Piastri, Norris, Verstappen. That's different to AI, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've all got. This could be the 6-pointer. Hopefully not for AI.
Yeah. Not tempted by Hulkenberg again?
No, I thought AI would do it. You're going to go through. It's going to be Hulkenberg.
Now, don't forget you can follow the show on Instagram and TikTok. Watch us on YouTube. Subscribe to us while you're there. Links are in the podcast show notes. And send in your predictions for the next race. Give us your 1, 2, 3. You can do that by checking out our Instagram stories or leave a comment on YouTube. Links are in the show notes. Also, feel free to send in any questions or thoughts about the show. Our email address is theinsidetrack@bbc.com. So we'll see you next week for Matt's mid-season chat with Ed Straw from the Race Podcast, and then a rival podcast. Are we doing sort of cross-pollination now?
Well, yes.
That's a good idea.
One big happy family.
And then we'll have Jenny Gow on from the Checker Flag, and then we'll get Betty Glover on from the Fast and the Curious. We'll do them all. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll be back with reaction to Spa. The Inside Track is funded and made by BBC Studios, a commercial company that is wholly owned by the BBC. It's produced by Nick Thompson, video editing and social media by Georgina Revel, and James Cook is the executive producer.